Imagine stepping into a classroom where every student is engaged, stretched, and supported, all without spending hours planning different tasks for different students. Sounds too good to be true? Well, it's not. Welcome to the world of adaptive teaching. Today, I'm breaking down what adaptive teaching is, how it's different from differentiation, and most importantly, 5 simple strategies you can use right now to make your teaching more adaptive. And I've got a free adaptive teaching strategies guide just for you. Just click the link in the description box below. Right, so many teachers are trained to use differentiation, modifying content, tasks, and support to fit different student needs. And while the intention is great, the reality, not so much. The first issue is over-planning and overload. Teachers are exhausted spending hours planning different worksheets, reading materials, and extension tasks, when actually students don't often need different content, they need better support to access the same content. The second issue is lowered expectations and unintended labels. Here's the real danger. When students are placed in low, middle, or high ability groups, they start to believe that that's where they belong. Those in the low group rarely get challenged, and those in the high group get spoon-fed harder tasks without necessarily understanding the struggle. This caps their potential. The third issue is that it's really hard to manage in real time. In a busy classroom, how do you track which students need which version of the work? What happens when a student in the middle group suddenly gets it and is ready to move on, but the worksheet they were given limits them? Let's say you're teaching a fashion design lesson on fabric manipulation techniques. You've planned differentiated tasks based on what you assume students can handle before the session. Group 1, the struggling students, are given a simplified worksheet with pre-drawn fabric swatches and descriptions. Their task is to match each swatch to the correct fabric type with a word bank provided. Group 2, the middle ability students, are given a step-by-step guide to create basic fabric manipulations like pleats and gathers with calico fabric. Group 3, the high achievers, are asked to experiment with advanced techniques like smocking or fabric origami and document their processes independently. Sounds logical, right? But here's the problem. Students in Group 1 might actually be able to attempt the fabric manipulation if they're given more support rather than a watered-down matching task. Students in Group 3 might struggle with the complexity of the task, but they're hesitant to ask for help because they've been labelled as high ability. If a student in the middle group excels with pleating, there's no quick way to move them to a more advanced challenge. By assigning tasks in advance before the lesson even starts, students are boxed into static expectations rather than being given the chance to explore, adapt, and challenge themselves dynamically within the lesson. Adaptive teaching flips this on its head, and instead of predetermined groups, all students could start with the same core task, perhaps experimenting with a basic pleat, and then you adjust support in real time based on how they respond. Struggling students might get scaffolding through visual guides, hand-over-hand demonstrations, and peer modelling, while confident students can be stretched with open-ended challenges, such as how could you adapt this technique to create more texture? This way, students aren't assigned their potential before they've even gotten started. They show you what they can do and you adapt accordingly. And the result? Higher expectations for all. No one is boxed into a level. Less prep stress. No need to create 3 versions of everything. More student independence. It encourages problem solving rather than dependency on scaffolded tasks, which can be given just in time. Now, before we move on to what makes adaptive teaching a better approach, I'd just like you to take a quick second to like this video and hit the subscribe button. It lets me know that I'm creating valuable content for you that you can put into action. So, what makes adaptive teaching a more effective approach? Well, the first core principle of adaptive teaching is high expectations for all. Instead of pre-deciding who gets what, adaptive teaching assumes that all students can engage with the core lesson. The role of the teacher is to make real-time tweaks, adding scaffolding for those who need support and extending the challenge for those ready to go deeper. The second principle is real-time adjustments based on student responses. Rather than relying on past data to assign different work, adaptive teaching uses constant formative assessment to gauge understanding in the moment. This might mean adjusting your questioning, re-explaining a concept, or asking a confident student to model a response. The third principle is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Adaptive teaching recognises that students learn in different ways and at different paces, but it doesn't mean different content. The key is providing dynamic support rather than fixed, pre-planned ability groups. Here are 5 powerful adaptive teaching strategies you can start using today. 1. Use quick, continuous formative assessments. The best teachers don't wait until the end of a lesson to check understanding, they're assessing throughout. Try using mini whiteboards or online polls for students to quickly show answers. Introduce thumbs up or thumbs down for instant feedback on confidence levels, or use exit tickets at the end of a lesson to inform your next steps. For example, in a geography lesson, students complete a quick digital quiz using Kahoot or a Google or Microsoft form about climate change. The teacher instantly reviews responses and realigns the lesson based on those misconceptions. 2. Scaffold instead of simplifying. Instead of making tasks easier for struggling students, scaffold the challenge so they can access it. Try offering sentence starters to help structure ideas, using thinking prompts to guide students towards the next step, or modelling examples step by step, rather than assuming students just get it. For example, in a psychology lesson, students exploring memory models receive structured flashcards with key terms and visuals, rather than a simplified version of the content. 3. Use flexible grouping. Ditch fixed ability groups and use dynamic, changing partnerships instead. Try pairing struggling students with those who have just mastered the topic and rotating roles regularly so that students experience different perspectives. For example, in a media class, students working on a film project rotate roles each session: director, scriptwriter, editor, to ensure everyone is stretched in different ways. 4. Adjust your questioning to stretch and support. Great questioning can make or break adaptive teaching. Try using no hands up to ensure all students engage, adjusting question depth based on student responses, and bouncing answers between students to develop rather than end the discussion. For example, in a catering lesson, while demonstrating a pastry technique, the teacher asks one of the students about the science behind lamination, then bounces the responses to another student to extend the concept. And number 5, teach metacognition and self-regulation. Students who reflect on how they learn become more independent. Try using assessment wrappers where students review mistakes and reflect on their study approach. Encourage the predict, monitor, evaluate technique, where students predict challenges, monitor understanding, and reflect on improvements. For example, travel and tourism students preparing a tour itinerary reflect on their decision-making process and discuss how they could improve efficiency next time. So to recap, adaptive teaching keeps expectations high for all while allowing real-time adjustments to support and stretch them. Check for understanding continuously, scaffold, don't simplify, keep groupings flexible, adapt questioning in the moment, and encourage students to reflect on their learning. Want to make this even easier? I've put together a free adaptive teaching strategies guide full of ready-to-use techniques to help you reduce planning time and boost student success. Click the link below to download it now. Let me know in the comments which of these strategies you'll try first, and I'll see you again in the next video.